Welcome to the Strategy of the Week presentation for November 8th, 2013. My name is Todd Shaffer. I'm the Manager of Research for VectorVest, and I'll be providing your strategy presentation this evening. With the current sluggishness in the economy, companies are struggling to maintain earnings performance, and we've seen many underperformers during this earnings season. With a limited ability to cut their way to profitability, market analysts are looking for companies who've been able to maintain earnings performance but also maintain top-line growth, or sales growth. It's much easier to maintain and improve profits if you have a customer base who is still demanding your product. Well, we can look for these companies too, and with VectorVest, it's very easy. Let's move into the program. From our Home tab, we'll click the Viewers tab and go into the Stock Viewer. We'll open the Stock Viewer and let's minimize the Viewer's toolbar. Of course, the stock viewer is just a giant spreadsheet of all 3,500 stocks that are currently in the Canadian database, and we have each of our 36 indicators and parameters listed within the stock viewer. If we scroll to the right, we'll come to the sales and market cap section of the database. Here we find there are 4 indicators that are related to the company's sales, and we begin with annual sales in millions. This number is updated in the VectorVest database on a weekly basis, although the companies often may report only on a quarterly basis. Next, we have sales growth. This is the sales growth rate in percent over the last 12 months, again updated on a weekly basis. Next, we come to sales per share, or the amount of sales per share of stock. And finally, the price to sales ratio. If you'd like to find those definitions on your own, simply right-click on the stock and go to the Full Stock Analysis Report, and the sales and market cap data is at the end of that report. But for our purposes, to identify the companies whose sales are still rising, the annual sales and sales growth indicators will be the most useful for us. And to find the companies who are improving in one or both aspects, the tool to use is Unisearch. So let's click on the Unisearch tool, and let's minimize for now the search toolbar. The Unisearch tool is a very powerful tool, and with that power comes flexibility. There are several methods or approaches that I could take to try to find stocks or companies with rising sales numbers. And there are 3 primary techniques that I could use to find those rising sales numbers, or in fact, any rising indicator for that matter. So let's quickly review them and talk about the pluses or the pros and cons of each one. So let's begin by selecting a parameter. We'll go to Stocks, and remember we're in the Sales Market Cap section of the Stock Viewer, and we want to go to the Sales, Yearly Sales in Millions. And my first approach is simply to find yearly sales that are higher today than they were at a historical date. So my operator is going to be greater than, so the yearly sales are greater than. Using my custom date and value function, I can choose a date of, say, 13 weeks ago, since they're reported quarterly. And I can go back to the stocks, yearly sales. I have a parameter that reads then that the stock sales are greater than they were 13 weeks ago. So on the pro side, they are higher, but I don't know how much higher. And that's true in both real terms, but also as a percentage. I've also yet to set a minimum or a maximum threshold if that was important to me as well. So that's our first approach, and we'll call that relative time. This functionality would obviously be exactly the same if we were talking about sales growth rate. It would operate in exactly the same way. The second common approach would be to use our trending operator. And so I might come in and say stocks, and this time let's go to sales market cap, but look at the sales growth rate. And in the operator section, I'll use trending. And for my value, I can choose 1 minute, days, or weeks. And since this data is updated on a weekly basis, we wouldn't want to go a shorter time frame than weekly. And I could say that it's been trending higher over the past 5 weeks. But with the trending operator, we need to be a little careful, because if I open up that trend again and use our custom trend window, we're now looking at 10 weeks of time frame here, The plus symbol just means that the value has risen now for the past 5 weeks in a row. So I need to caution you to not get overly restrictive, because if you had a stock whose sales growth dipped 3 weeks ago, yet it's still higher this week than it was 5 weeks ago, you would eliminate it from the search results. And of course, with the trend operator, you can not only identify general trend, but you can also specify threshold values above or below a specific value. Our third technique, and I think probably the most flexible of them all, is the use of our delta indicator. So let's put up stock sales growth again. A delta simply looks for the magnitude of change of any indicator, usually expressed in percentage. And of course, we're looking for that change over a period of time. So once I've selected the delta operator in the value box, then I can use relative time, say 10 days from the date of search, or I could say specific time and use a specific calendar date and time. Staying with relative time, the time frame I'm interested in is 13 weeks, which would be a quarter, which is the shortest reporting period typical for most of these companies. With display only selected, the values would display on the search result, and I could cherry pick from those results, leaving the original sort, VST descending in this case, intact. Or I can choose a specific value that I want it to be over, greater than, say, 5%, or values greater than 5 but less than 20. Or I can sort them so that the greatest values come to the top of the list if it's descending, or the smallest values to the top of the list if it's ascending. And in this case, I would simply click OK. With this criteria, then I would get sorted to the top of the list the stocks that have the strongest sales growth improvement on a percentage basis over the past 13 weeks. So unlike our more restrictive trending indicator, as long as I'm higher on a 13-week basis, it doesn't really matter what happened in the interim or intervening weeks. Notice, however, that my sort also changed to bring me the strongest or largest changes in sales growth to the top of the list. But what if I don't want to upset my sort? Well, perhaps I would do something like specify a value greater than 0 so that over the past 13 weeks, the percentage increase has been greater than 0. It's been a positive increase over the past 13 weeks. Now I know that it's had a positive change, but again, I haven't specified any values. Of course, I could say that that change needs to be 5% or 10% or 20% even. But the thing to be careful here is that that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a positive result. It may have gone from sales shrinkage of 20% over 13 weeks to sales shrinkage of 10%, which is a great improvement on a percentage basis, but sales growth is still shrinking. So that doesn't set a threshold, so you might want to add a line of criteria that says that the sales growth is greater than 0, so that you know that it's at least positive sales growth. So that's a quick primer on the options that you have available within the Unisearch tool and some of their functionality. And they're all viable solutions for you to explore. But tonight we're introducing a new search to the database named Top Line Growers. We're going to find it if we go into our searches window. We'll find it in the net profit margin group, and we'll click on Top Line Growers. And now applying some of what we just learned, we can see that the first line of criteria looks for the stock's earnings per share to be rising over the past 13 weeks. So we're going to find companies that are improving their earnings performance over the past quarter. Secondly, we're going to look for sales growth that has been improving also over that last 13-week period or last quarter. And here we selected sales growth over raw sales because we're interested in seeing that sales are accelerating, that their sales growth rate is improving, not that they're just up dollar over dollar. Now, we didn't specify any values here, but you certainly can. Next, we added minimum price and volume requirements, and we're sorting the search results by a combination of comfort index and relative safety. So we're bringing to the top of our list companies with improving sales and earnings with the best combination of price persistence and safety. Let's run the search and take a look at our results. We'll close the searches toolbar and click Run Search. Looking at our search results, you can see we have the calculated values for each of our search criteria and our sort criteria. As we scroll to the right, we'll see more of the stock data. And from that 30,000 foot view, at the top of the list, I have some pretty mid to high price stocks. As a group, they performed fairly well in today's market movement. Looking at their fundamentals, look at their RV and their RS scores. Nice safety scores. As a rule, they're in nice uptrends. Buy and hold ratings. Strong earnings yields as well as earnings per share. If we continue scrolling to the right. Some good dividend yielders in there. Some not paying dividends, but many good yielders. And if we keep rolling over to the sales numbers, generally some good sales growth numbers, although I do have 2 negative numbers, so I might want to improve this by adding a minimum value for sales growth and see if that improves my results. But let's take a look at some charts. I'll click Graph All. And we'll change our default layout. Let's take off relative timing, and let's add the indicators from our search, earnings. And we'll have to go to the parameter window, and we'll look in the sales market cap group for sales growth. It comes to the bottom of the list. Click the box, and we'll add it to the graph. And of course, generically, when we're looking at a graph, here we're looking at a 1-year time frame. We're looking for the indicators to go from bottom left to upper right. The smoother, the better. Here we see on Magna, price action has been steadily moving bottom left to upper right without a lot of volatility. Earnings bottom left to upper right. A little hiccup, but has been trending up nicely. And sales have been trending nicely bottom left to upper right. What a great example right out of the box. Let's take a look at the next one. MX. Again, nice bottom left to upper right movement in price, a little more volatility. Again, earnings traveling up nicely, sales growth traveling nicely. And you can just kind of click through these, sales growth off a little bit. But remember, our search was looking for improved sales growth over the last quarter. So it's really looking in this August time frame forward. So now we're just looking through the graphs ourselves, and you can cherry pick the best looking graphs, the best looking stocks out of this group. And so we have some very nice looking graphs searching on current data. Let's see how this has performed over time. To do that, we need to go to the backtester. In the backtesting tool, then we'll click on the Backtest an Idea wizard. 2 special notes as we do create this backtest. First of all, the backtest settings that we're about to go through are duplicated in a PDF formatted file. You can link to that file through the VectorVest views in the strategy section. Also, we're going to use the automated timing function of the backtester called Auto Tester, which includes then the market timing signals automatically. This is a plug-in module. It is an additional cost. If you're interested, you can get a free trial to it if you're interested in trying it out. Of course, the results can be accomplished without the Auto Tester. You just simply go point to point. For my initial passes, I might run this search against multiple timers to see which market timing system works best with this search and the kinds of stocks it finds. Well, not surprisingly, I found this search worked best with confirmed calls. I have high CI stocks, high safety value stocks. These are steady eddies, looking for good earnings performance and sales growth. These stocks take a little while to percolate and can tend to trend nicely. And so we'll use our much less frenetic confirmed calls timing system. Next, for the up signals, the confirmed up calls, we'll find our search down in the net profit margin group. And if I scroll down further, we'll click on top line growers. For our initial run, we'll use no stop criteria. We'll just take a base run and we'll see how the search performs natively. And for more settings, we'll use 10 positions, opening all 10 immediately. We'll close any open positions on the turns. Average value, odd lots. Let's limit our repurchases to 31 days. And I'm going to force industry diversification by not allowing more than 3 stocks per industry in our group of 10, and their maximum percent average volume at 2%. I come to the bottom and click Next, And for our rules for the confirmed down call, we're just going to go to cash. And for our test period, I want to see several market turns. So I'm going to go back to 2010 at the beginning of the year. And we started with a confirmed down call. Let's go back, see when our first up call was back in November 11th of 2009. So the end of 2009, and we'll bring it all the way current, which at the time I conducted the test was Thursday night. And we'll give it a description. Top line growers base run. I come to the bottom and I'll click finish and run. Here we finished. If we look at our results, we can see that overall we had 58% winners. We had an overall gain of 39.69%. That averages just shy of 10% a year, and our maximum drawdown was 18.8%. More important at this point, because this was simply buy and hold, buy on the green light, sell on the red, I do have a nice correlation of this search performing well in up markets identified by the confirmed up call. I do have a couple instances where I had a pretty strong pullback in that equity curve, and so we'll first try to minimize and manage that with some stop criteria. What I am happy to see is in the more recent time frames, of course, the most recent data set being the most relevant to the current market condition, the search is performing well currently. And so my next step is to rerun the test using multiple combinations of stop criteria. I found my best performance by striking a copy, clicking on the Automation Rules Up section and changing our stop criteria to a gain loss with a 50% gain and a 20% loss. And of course, once I've made those changes, leaving everything else the same, I came down and changed my description to reflect the change in stop criteria. And I click Finish and Run. And here we see with those changes we were able to stay fairly consistent with a percentage of winners, still at 55%, but we improved our gain almost 11 points up to 51.73%, which on an annual basis is almost 13% on average, and we improved our drawdown down to 16.4%. Looking at our equity curve, we did minimize some of those drawdowns, and we even turned that sideways action into a winning turn here in that volatile market of late 2012. And so some very nice returns from this backtest. And remember, of course, that the settings for this backtest, if you'd like to recreate it, are available for you as a PDF document. You can get to that from the views. We did automate the market timing signals. Again, that's using the Auto Tester plugin. Again, a link to that in the views if you'd like to give it a try for a couple weeks or purchase it. But for me, this is really just the beginning. I think this search would lend itself very well to some cherry picking techniques like the Midas Touch graph layout or the Colt 45 layout that is part of that Midas Touch system. And so maybe we'll look at that at some future date, but for now, that's about all the time we have. So before we conclude, I want to remind you that we do have a webinar scheduled on Monday to talk specifically about this Strategy of the Week presentation. These have proven to be very helpful. They tend to be a little bit more open-ended where we can ask questions. First, we try to go specifically to the strategy presentation, but it's not uncommon for us to get more wide-ranging than that. If you'd like to, you can register for that webinar in the VectorVest.com website under Events. It's also in the VectorVest Views section in this evening's Views tab. With that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention and attending the strategy presentation this week. If you have any questions, please feel free to call us in product support. We're available all day Eastern Time from 7 in the morning until the 1 a.m. time frame of the following morning. And of course, we invite you to come back to the VectorVest University to see other strategy presentations and garner more ideas exhibited in the past. And so until next time, have a great weekend.